Okay, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. And back to Zoom. Here we go, back to Zoom. I think we're all set up for everything. And away we go. Haribo. Okay, so we're going to chant Caritamrta first. I'm using a different microphone, a wireless microphone this time. Let me put it up here. So in this way, we may have better audio. Actually, and my camera is in Maya today. Let me just, okay. Camera's not in Maya now. Okay, good. So then I can be anywhere and have good audio. Okay. Let me, oops, button my shirt. Okay, ready? And a 1, and a 2, and a ready, go. Jaya Randa Madhuva Jaya Kunya Bihari Jaya Randa Madhuva Jaya Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Pallabha Jaya Giri Varunare Giri Varunare Vichana Balama Jaya Giri Varunare Giri Varunare Yasoda Nandana Jaya Vajrajana Nandana Yasoda Nandana Jaya Vajrajana Nandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Randa Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Rada Madhova Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giri Varunare Jaya Giri Varunare Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Giri Varunare Jaya Giri Varunare Yasoda Nandana Jaya Vajrajana Nandana Yasoda Nandana Jaya Vajrajana Nandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivakacharya all Satara Satashi Shimai His Divine Grace Avaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavanam ki jai. Mathuram ki jai. Jagannath Swami ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Shrimati Tulasi Devi ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deja Tarne. Whoops, camera's not working now. All right. So, Om Ganat Miranda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shi Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So we're continuing with our study of the Sri Caitanya Charitamrta by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, gang. Let us go. Let's see. We're going to share the screen right now. We're on the 7th chapter of the Adi Lila, begin with text, I believe, 84. All right. It is Saturday here and Sunday for some of you. Here we go. Okay. And let me take the black section away from here. And again, if any of you really have a question in the middle, you can raise your hand. We're going to give you facility. Hopefully we'll give you facility. Give me 1 second. We will try to give you facility. Let me put up the participant window so we can see who is interested. Okay, that's really good. Here we go. Krishna Vishayaka Prema Parama Purushartha Yara Getrinatuya Chari Purushartha. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation are known as the 4 goals of life. That is material goals. But before love of Godhead, the 5th and highest goal, these appear as insignificant as straw in the street. So purport. While chanting the holy name of the Lord, one should not desire the material advancements represented by religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately liberation from the material world. As stated by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest perfection in life is to develop love for Krishna. Prema Pumartha Mahan Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam. When we compare love of Godhead with religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, we can understand that these achievements may be desirable objects for ubukshis, or those who desire to enjoy this material world, and mumukshis, or those who desire liberation from it. But they are very insignificant in the eyes of a pure devotee who has developed bhava, the preliminary stage of love of Godhead. Dharma, religiosity; artha, economic development; kama, sense gratification; and moksha, liberation, are the four principles of religion that pertain to the material world. Therefore, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is declared, Dharma, projita koitavotra. That's from the first canto, first chapter, text 2. Cheating religious systems in terms of these four material principles are completely discarded from Srimad Bhagavatam, for Srimad Bhagavatam teaches only how to develop one's dormant love of God. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam, and therefore it ends with the words, Sarvadharman Parityasya Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. To adopt this means one should reject all ideas of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, and fully engage in the service of the Lord, which is transcendental to these four principles. Love of Godhead is the original function of the spirit soul, and it is as eternal as the soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This eternity is called Sanatan. When a devotee revives his loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it should be understood that he has been successful in achieving the desired goal of his life. At that time, everything is automatically done by the mercy of the holy name, and the devotee automatically advances in his spiritual progress. I think I will explain Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. These are called the four Purusharthas. That means goals of human beings. Dharma, in this particular context, doesn't indicate what we usually use the word dharma for, which is the inherent quality of something. Dharma, in this particular context, indicates some religious formularities that are generally executed for a variety of purposes. One purpose is, of course, to go to the heavenly planets or material advancement. Another purpose is just to feel oneself religious and be attached to doing, quote, the right thing, even when doing the right thing interferes with Krishna consciousness. So I will give an example of that. After I put my phone on mute, I will give an example of that. Give me 1 second. We will mute the phone. All right. Mute. So, an example of that is Grandfather Bhishma, who was attached to the religious formality of always telling the truth and keeping your promise or his promise, even when that meant he allowed the attempted disrobing of Draupadi. So here is like mundane dharma, mundane concept, and sometimes those mundane concepts should be kept. Generally, they should be kept, but not when they interfere with Krishna consciousness. Therefore, the process of sharanagati, giving yourself to Krishna, entails accepting everything favorable for Krishna consciousness and rejecting everything unfavorable. How do you understand what's favorable? How do you understand what's unfavorable? Well, you should go to the spiritual master and ask what's favorable, what's unfavorable. You can't make up your own unfavorable and all your own favorable. So that's Dharma. And sometimes people do genuine dharmic activities just for material things. They go to the church and say, Our Father who art in heaven, give us this day our daily bread and daily pizza and dedi pakora or whatever. Or they go to Satyanarayan Katha. Uh-oh, someone's chatting. This better be about the quality. Yes, Bhishma is a pure devotee, but he made a big mistake. Bhishma is the statement here was, Bhishma is a pure devotee. Yes. But even as a pure devotee, he stuck to a promise that he should not have kept. He made a mistake. You may say, well, he's a pure devotee. How could he make a mistake? Well, it's the Lord's pastimes. That's generally how I would explain it. But Bhishma, at the end of the Mahabharata, Bhishma actually realizes that Dharma is determined by the consequences of an action, not by the ritual itself. And he gives the example, and I've spoken about this before, but since the text message was put up, I should explain this. He gives the example that once upon a time there were a bunch of people being attacked by dacoits, gundas, bad people, criminals, whatever you call them. And they were running away from the criminals to save their lives. And they ran into an ashram of a great sage. And the criminals went to the great sage and said, have you seen those people? And the great sage said, I cannot tell a lie. They're in my ashram. And the people were killed. So in that particular case, the sage stuck to his principle of Dharma, but basically it had a very bad effect. So what Bhishma didn't realize, and as I said, this is a pastime, we can say he's a pure devotee, he's one of the Mahajans. What Bhishma didn't realize, and he admits this in the Mahabharata, that Dharma is determined by the consequences of an action. And we understand that the ultimate Dharma is determined by the consequences, the Krishna conscious consequences of an action. And Bhishma did not consider that at that point. You can say it's a pastime. Okay, let's say it's a pastime. So in any case, we're talking about transcendental Dharma versus material Dharma when we talk about the four Purusharthas. Material Dharma versus transcendental Dharma. Material Dharma takes you away from Krishna, and transcendental Dharma takes you to Krishna. And even material Dharma is very difficult to understand, and that's brought out in the Mahabharata. Tarko Pratishta, Shrutina, Vibhina. To understand what is actually Dharma, either materially or spiritually, one has to Mahajanayena Gata Sapantha. One has to follow the example or the teachings of a great personality known as a Mahajana. Mahajana means great personality. So, Grandfather Bhishma did not understand Dharma until he was lying on the bed of arrows. This is one of the lessons of the Mahabharata. So, Dharma, and as Prabhupada makes reference here, Dharma Projitakai Tavoj Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam, that the Bhagavatam throws out all mundane or what it considers to be cheating Dharma. Dharma that actually takes one away from Krishna. Okay, so many people in the Mahabharata actually became confused between what was Dharma and what was not Dharma, and Grandfather Bhishma certainly did until he was lying on the bed of arrows, and then I guess that's a little late to come to the realization, but he did explain it to Yudhisthira Maharaj at the end of the Mahabharata. So, then Dharma, Artha. Artha means economic development or obtaining things that you want. Things that you want. And of course, things that you don't want are called anarthas. That's devotional service. Things we don't want are things like what? Lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, etc., like that. So, generally, when you take the term artha to mean economic development, because one needs money to be able to enjoy this world. And we were hearing from the Caitanya Caritamrta this morning that sometimes if one takes money from an impure place or an impure person, it can contaminate the mind. And what do they say? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when one has money, it can really corrupt the mind, and also in the symptoms or in the manifestation of Kali or Kali Yuga, one of the places that Kali Yuga resides is in wealth or gold hoarded for improper purposes. So one has to be very, very careful. And of course, we have Lord Chaitanya say, Nadanam Najandam Nasundarim, that one shouldn't really be interested in those things for one's own enjoyment. Of course, for the enjoyment of the Lord, we want people, Dhanam, Janam, Sundarim, want all sorts of people and money to be used in Krishna's service. So that's a different subject matter. So that's artha. And then when you have plenty of artha or economic development, then after that you get good old kama. Just like in the Vedic literatures, you have this one literature that's not one of the central Vedic literatures, but it's literature that basically all the rascals read. It's called the Kama Sutra. It deals with lust. Anyway, so that means trying to enjoy the material world. You have money, you have beautiful people of the opposite sex or same sex or whatever, or a nice Tesla or something. Then dharma, artha, kama, enjoyment. And then when you get fried out with enjoyment in this world, because it does fry you out after some time, you get really disappointed. As they say, does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight? There's a famous song like that. And then you want to just like get the hell out. You feel depressed, want to get out of this world, and that's called moksha. And that's also material because it's all these four, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, are considered material because they're considered to be focused on I and mine, the two divisions of false ego. So we are interested in Krishna and Krishnas. That's the opposite of I and mine. Krishna is the center, and everything belongs to Krishna. Ishabhashamidam sarvam yadkincha jagajam jagat. Tena chaktena gunjata magredha kashasvid danam. Everything is owned and controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyway, so that's what dharma, artha, and kama, moksha mean, for those of you who don't know. So let's continue so I don't spend all the time on one verse. Panchama purushartha, that means the fifth goal of human beings. Prema nandamrita sindhu bokshadi ananda yara nahi eka bindu. For a devotee who has actually developed bhava, bhava means spiritual motion, the pleasure derived from dharma, artha, kama, and moksha appear to be like a drop in the presence of the sea. Insignificant. Krishna namera phala prema sarva shastre kai. Bhaje se prema tomaya, karila udai. The conclusion of all revealed scriptures is that one should awaken his dormant love of Godhead. You are greatly fortunate to have done so. Wow. Of course, this is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master talking to him, and this whole conversation is being related to Prakashananda Saraswati in Benares in the assembly of Mayavadis. So with text 87, Premara swabhave kare chitta tanuk shobha. Krishnara charana prapje upajaya lobha. It is a characteristic of love of Godhead that by nature it induces transcendental symptoms in one's body and makes one more and more greedy to achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Premara swabhave bhakta hase kande gaya. Unmata haya nache iti uti dhaya. When one actually develops love of Godhead, he naturally sometimes cries, sometimes laughs, sometimes chants, and sometimes runs here and there, just like a madman. So, purport. In this connection, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami says that sometimes persons who have no love of Godhead at all display ecstatic bodily symptoms artificially. They sometimes laugh, cry, and dance just like madmen. But this cannot help one progress in Krishna consciousness. Rather, such artificial agitation of the body is to be given up when one naturally develops the necessary bodily symptoms. Actual blissful life manifested in genuine spiritual laughing, crying, and dancing is the symptom of real advancement in Krishna consciousness, which can be achieved by a person who always voluntarily engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. If one who is not yet developed imitates such symptoms artificially, he creates chaos in the spiritual life of a human society. So the reason one would imitate these symptoms is because one wants attention. One wants to be considered a great devotee. So there's this interesting story. Let me tell this story. Once upon a time, there was a snake charmer, and he was chanting some poetry in relationship with Ananta Shesh, who is Vishnu Tattva, expansion of the Lord, who is in the form of a snake, many, many heads. And so he was chanting that, and when this great devotee Haridas Thakur, who happened to be born in a Muslim family, heard this, he started dancing and showing symptoms of ecstasy, rolling on the ground, and hair stood on end and everything like that. And everyone stood to the side, and the snake charmer stood to the side, and everyone was glorifying Haridas Thakur. Okay? Then there was a Brahmin who watched this and thought, ooh, I can be glorified too. Haribol. So he began to imitate Haridas Thakur. And as he began to imitate Haridas Thakur, he rolled on the ground and crocodile tears came from his eyes. Then what happened is the snake charmer came out and started kicking the Brahmin. Kick, kick, kick. And the Brahmin said, why are you kicking me? You were glorifying Haridas Thakur. And the snake charmer said, yes, you were imitating, you rascal. Haridas Thakur was genuinely exhibiting symptoms of ecstasy. So we have to be able to distinguish between genuine symptoms of ecstasy and imitation. All right. Next text. These are some of the symptoms of ecstasy. Some of them are Sattvika bhavas, and some of them are, let's say, some of them Vyabhachari bhavas. Huh, nice. Sveda Kampa Raman Shastru Gada Guda Vaivarnya Unmara Vishada Darya Garva Harsha Dainya Eta Bhava Prema Bhakta Ganere Nachaya Krishnera Anandamrita Sagare Vasaya. Perspiration, trembling, standing on end of one's bodily hairs, tears, faltering voice, fading complexion, madness, melancholy, patience, pride, joy, and humility. These are various natural symptoms of ecstatic love of Godhead, which causes a devotee to dance and float in an ocean of transcendental bliss while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So for those of us who have studied bhavas in our previous seminar on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar Devotion, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in this particular case is the vibhava, that which stimulates the emotion. And you have Ashtasattvika bhavas here, and Vyabhachari bhavas here. And let's see, is there any Anubhavas? Yes, I guess the intense Anubhavas are there, which can also be considered to be Vyabhachari bhavas, when they get really intense and uncontrollable. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Priti Sandarbha 66 explains the stage of love of Godhead. Bhagavat Priti Rupa Vritir Mayadi Mayina Bhavati Kim Tarhi Swarup. Give me a second. Swarup Shaktyananda Rupa Yadananda Paradina Shri Bhagavan Apiti. Similarly, in the 69th text, he offers further explanation. Tadevam pratir lakshanam chitadarvastasya charama harshadikam. Here's the end. Kathanchit jate pi chitadrave roma harshadike vanachedashaya shudistatapi na bhakti samyagavir bhava iti gyapitam ashaya sudir namachanya tatparya parityajkaha kriti tatparyam cha ataivani swabhavikae cheti tad visheshanam. Transcendental love of Godhead is not under the jurisdiction of the material energy, for it is the transcendental bliss and pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Supreme Lord is also under the influence of the transcendental bliss, when one comes in touch with such bliss in love of Godhead, one's heart melts, and the symptoms of this are standing of the hairs on end, etc. Sometimes a person thus melts and manifests these transcendental symptoms, yet at the same time is not well behaved in his personal transactions. This indicates that he has not yet reached complete perfection in devotional life. In other words, a devotee who dances in ecstasy, but after dancing and crying appears to be attracted to material affairs, has not yet reached the perfection of devotional service, which is called ashaya shuddhi, or the perfection of existence. One who attains the perfection of existence is completely averse to material enjoyment and engrossed in transcendental love of Godhead. It is therefore to be concluded that the ecstatic symptoms of ashaya shuddhi are visible when the devotee's service has no material cause and is purely spiritual in nature. These are characteristics of transcendental love of Godhead, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 2nd Chapter, Text 6. Savaibum samparo dharmo yato bhaktir adhoksajay ahaitakya pratiyata yayatma suprasidati. That religion is best which causes its followers to become ecstatic in love of God that is unmotivated and free from material impediments, for this alone can completely satisfy the self. And there was one thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about. That when one is on the proper platform, one is nishta, which is being described here. What is being described here is the difference between nishta and anishta. Nishta means, we got someone raising their hand, someone putting a chat. Who is the self? Don't ask the questions on the chat. Just raise your hand if you want to ask a question. And Lila has a question next, so because the chat should just be reserved if we have a technical difficulty, please. So we're talking about nishta and anishta bhakti, or the different stages of nishta. Nishta means steadiness. So sometimes you'll find people that are partially nishta in devotional service. That means they are very good at kirtan, very good at class, very good when taking prashadam, and very good when, what else? Cooking prashadam. But as soon as they leave the temple and go back to their home, they are nasty to their wives, not nice to their friends, political. So that's called semi-nishta bhakti. Actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about this, that there's two stages of nishta. One is when one is very determined and fixed in one's devotional service, but outside of when he's doing the service, other things can happen. And the other stage, or the highest stage, is when one is very fixed in devotional service, and then throughout his life, 24/7, 365, and also 366 on leap year. One is steady. Okay, so we have a question. The first bold devotee is asking a question right in the middle. Rajalila, you have a question. You raised your hand.
Hi, well, please accept my obeisances. I was
Okay.
thinking, okay, when it says, um, when one comes in touch with such bliss and love of Godhead, one's heart melts. And so, like with the difference of the devotees, that aren't fixed and are the ones that aren't fixed still experience this like they still come in touch with this pure love. I'm kind of um
Yeah.
confused on how they have the symptoms of ecstasy.
Yeah, that's described in Nectar Devotion. If you remember during our class in Nectar Devotion,
Mm.
we talked about a burnt up or dried up ecstasies, which can occur even if one is not a devotee, what to speak of if one is a aspiring devotee, if one comes in touch with a great pure devotee or comes in touch with someone speaking nicely about Krishna Katha or hears a kirtan. So that's sometimes called like a shadow or reflected ecstasy that sometimes can occur. And sometimes we describe that as a coming attraction. That Krishna sends us a little coming attraction in the beginning. And the example I gave of that in my own life was not about me, because I'm not saying I experienced ecstasy. But the example I gave about that was once upon a time, many years ago in San Diego, we had a beautiful festival to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was in a place called Balboa Park, which is right next to the zoo. The zoo has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. Anyway, it was right next to the zoo, and we had chanting, prasadam distribution, and I was being a very sincere soul and distributing Prabhupada's books on the periphery of the festival. And I approached one man, and he had a giant smile on his face. And he said, I am feeling so much ecstasy. Oh, he didn't use the word ecstasy. Happiness. Why am I experiencing this? Wasn't a devotee, never came in touch with the devotees before, certainly wasn't following the regulated principles, at least as far as I know. I didn't ask him about the regulated principles. But he said, I'm experiencing so much ecstasy. And he said, are you burning marijuana or something? And I said, no. That's because he was on the periphery of the spiritual atmosphere that was created around this festival. Another experience I had was when I met Prabhupada for the first time. This was in 1971, summer of 1971 in Gainesville, Florida. Prabhupada walked in the temple, and I experienced not only ecstasy, I mean, my hair stood on end. And at that time, I had more hairs to stand on end. So my hair stood on end, and I felt no more attachment for anything in this material world just by being in Prabhupada's presence. And then I experienced that ecstasy, even as a completely fresh bhakta. I mean, I was already following regulated principles, but I was not a meat eater, did not have any meat in my teeth. So, but I experienced that just in Prabhupada's presence, so that can happen.
What does
All right.
it mean like burnt up or like dried up? Like why are those words used?
That means that right now one is dried up. Dried up because one is in the material world, one is a kinchana gochara. One is actually fried with the material world. And burnt means, I guess, was one would be a mayavadi or something like that, or burnt out. It's not really described by Rupa Goswami. I would just be speculating why he used the word burnt or dried up ecstasy. So
Thank you.
thank you. Good question. That was the type of question we like. Okay, so let's continue. It's nice having questions in the middle when some of you may have questions. What happened with my? Okay, there we go. There we go. My camera's cooperating again. Oh, Govinda. I didn't know the Supreme Personality of Godhead was online. Govinda. Oh my God. Where's Radharani? Anyway, so I okay, so we have a question from Govinda's iPhone.
Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisance. Always.
Oh, it's Pran Govinda. Oh,
Oh, Maharaj.
I
Maharaj, I
thought it was.
love you. I love you. You are such a wonderful way of teaching. I just love your personality. Thank you.
Thank you. At least someone loves me.
We do. I think everybody does, Maharaj. You are such a wonderful.
You and my mother. You should meet my mother. Okay, so what's the question?
Maharaj, on that sloka, Savi Pungsa Paradharma, Jayatma Suprasiddhati, last word,
Yeah.
the Atma has to be both super soul and soul. Otherwise, it cannot be satisfied.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good point. Both Krishna and the soul are satisfied. I agree.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, obviously. The Atma can be referred to Paramatma and also uh, the individual's soul. Yeah, the Atma superseded. That's very good. I never thought of that, but it's absolutely a fact. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next is Praneshra. Oh, so what's your question, Praneshra? Gurudev. Yeah, what's your question? Uh-oh. I can't hear anything you're saying, but you're muted. Okay, we'll go on. Oh, Sumuk, you. Oh my God, there's my Google Home again. Sumuk, you have a question? Anyway, Sumuk, you have a question?
Yes,
Um,
Gurudev.
okay, ask me a question.
Gurudev, regarding in the Ramayana,
Yeah,
we see that the all the Banar Sena made the bridge to from South India to Sri Lanka,
yeah,
and
that's
they
nice.
yes, and they wrote Lord Ram's name on all the stone or the rocks so that it doesn't
Yeah,
sink. So after they built the bridge, they worked on it to Lanka. And
yes.
my understanding is, if you write Lord Ram's name on the rock and all that place, Ram, how can you walk on the rock? I'm just confused.
Well, I remember when I was crossing the bridge with the monkeys several million years ago, I looked at the rocks. Hopefully, you're not gonna take this seriously. And the and the Ram's name was written on the side of the rocks, not where we walked.
Oh,
At least that's what I remember from years ago.
okay, okay.
I mean, it's been several million years since I was there, but I'm sure they didn't walk on Ram's name. In other words,
Yeah.
I'm sure the Ram's name was written on the rocks, but not where people stepped.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean,
Yes. Yes.
it's not like the movie. It was actually quite different than the movie.
Mm.
No, no devotee would write on Ram's name. No, would step on Ram's name because Ram's name, as Ram promised Hanuman, Ram's name is more powerful than Ram himself.
Mm.
Remember that story?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So no devotee would ever
Mm.
step on Ram's name. Okay?
Yes, Gurudev. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. And now we will. Oh, let me lower your hand for you. It's interesting. I have the power to lower your hand. Feels good being so powerful. So text 91. I'm just joking. Bala haila pala tumi parama purushartha. Whoops. Got too ecstatic. Tumara premetayami hailan kritartha. It is very good, my dear child, that you have attained the supreme goal of life by developing love of Godhead. Thus you have pleased me very much, and I am very much obliged to you. Now, again, this is Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master talking to him. Someone sending me a chat and being very pleased. What's that? Message comes, host not allowed to unmute. I am unmuted. Oh, that's from Praneshra. Okay. I'll give you another chance if you raise your hand after I finish with this particular purport, Praneshra. So you could raise your hand again, Praneshra. So this is Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, who was actually very pleased that his disciple has achieved pure love of Godhead. So this is a question of non-envy. The spiritual master becomes more pleased when the disciple does more than him. Because the relationship is like father and son or father and daughter, that it's a loving relationship. If your son or daughter does something wonderful, the father just becomes so proud and so pleased. In the same way, if we do something wonderful, or at least we maintain Srila Prabhupada's movement, Prabhupada will be pleased with us. Prabhupada has no false ego. Generally in this world we have a false ego. We like to be praised ourselves. We like to be prominent. We like to have money. We like to have control. But when one is a pure devotee, one appreciates more than anything else the devotion of other devotees. And if one's disciple does something wonderful, wow, then you don't mind if people say, hey, you're the spiritual, identify you as the spiritual master of a prominent disciple instead of the disciple as a disciple of you, if you understand what I'm talking about. Let me finish with the purport, Praneshra, and then we'll take your question, because at that time we can probably go change from screen sharing to our regular mode. According to the revealed scriptures, if a spiritual master can convert even one soul into a perfectly pure devotee, his mission in life is fulfilled. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur always used to say, even at the expense of all the properties, temples, and mouths that I have, if I could convert even one person into a pure devotee, my mission would be fulfilled. It is very difficult, however, to understand the science of Krishna, what to speak of developing love of Godhead. Therefore, if by the grace of Lord Caitanya and the spiritual master, a disciple attains the standard of pure devotional service, the spiritual master is very happy. The spiritual master is not actually happy if the disciple brings him money. That's true. But when he sees that a disciple, because all these things are temporary, so the spiritual master's first consideration is the spiritual life of the disciple. Let's see. All right. But when he sees that a disciple, let me see about this. Right. When he sees that a disciple is following the regular principles and advancing in spiritual life, he is very glad and feels obliged to an advanced disciple. Okay. That's pretty wonderful. So let's go back to the normal window in Zoom, and then we'll let Praneshra say something. That's our normal window, and Praneshra and others will be allowed to unmute yourselves. Okay, Praneshra, take it away. You can unmute yourself now, unless you have trouble. Yeah.
Yes. Guru,
Yeah.
yeah, my question is like the Vishnu Dev is the pure devotee of Krishna?
Yes.
and he keep promise, then he get stuck. So it is lesson for us to not keep promise and do not get stuck. And
It it is a lesson for us that whatever we do, we should judge by the standard, highest spiritual standard, which is whatever pleases Krishna. That's all. I mean, like Arjuna, he was in the battlefield and he had to do a lot of things. Hey, let me turn my other light on so you can see me better to see me with. Whoops. There we go. So Arjuna was in the battlefield, and he had to do a lot of things that normally would be considered really dharmic. Like if I told you to kill your cousin brothers, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's against the Dharma Shastras. I don't think I have to look it up. If I told you to kill your guru, your martial arts guru, I'm sure that that is actually against the religious principles. So don't do it. Don't do it. And well, if Krishna tells you to kill your guru, like send me an email message first so I know. So I'm warned. So I can just like escape and get away because I'm not going to fight you. So anyway, so the point is what we call there's two things. There's 2 points. I mean, the most important point is what pleases Krishna, and Krishna's not going to tell any of us to do any stupid thing, and Krishna's certainly not going to tell us to kill anybody. So don't worry about it. Krishna's not going to tell us to break the law. You know, it's obvious. These are extraordinary circumstances, or those were extraordinary circumstances in which Arjuna found himself. However, that's the ultimate judge of morality. And that's the first mistake Grandfather Bhishma made, that he understood that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Second mistake, he didn't consider the consequences of his so-called dharma, which is the most important material aspect of understanding what to do and what not to do. In other words, you may have made a promise to always tell the truth, but if telling the truth will get someone killed, then it's probably better not to tell the truth. I mean, all right, forget about the story in the Mahabharata. Another story came to me. In Germany during World War II, there were the Nazis in Germany, and some really brave persons were giving shelter to Jewish people in their homes. I mean, if you read the book, The Diary of Anne Frank, I mean, there's many books about this. And the Nazis would come to their door, knock, 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 knock. And they would say, do you have any Jewish people in your home? Let's see if I can do my German accent. Do you have any German people, Jewish people in your home? Open the door. Let us see. That's my German accent. And the people who were in the home said, no, no, sir. We have no people, no Jewish people. So they lied. And by lying, they were actually, I just muted you because there was noise coming from you. By lying, they were actually protected and doing the right thing. So it's not that lying is good. Generally, a devotee should always tell the truth. Generally. Peace, love. However, if it is to protect someone, then there's a higher priority. If it's Krishna's service, it's a higher priority. I mean, for example, I'll give you another example of my own life. One time I went to a country where it was illegal for a devotee to enter the country. I went there to preach. So I went there dressed up in a Western suit, not a Carmi suit. Western suit with a tie and jacket and everything like that. And I went to immigration. The guy looks at my passport, and somehow or other he sees that I guess I had some lines, extra lines there from the tilak, because when you go in the sun, it makes lines in your head. He said, "Are you a Krishna conscious devotee?" And I said, "Krishna consciousness? What's that? I never heard of that." I didn't even say Krishna. I said, "How do you pronounce that?" Kri? No, I'm an atheist. So, and he said, "Okay, you can go in the country now." So, actually, I hate to tell you what country that was. Trinidad in those days, which is actually half Indian country, but they didn't want any Hare Krishnas coming in. Similar to that in Singapore. Because the ritualistic brahmanas don't like the Hare Krishna devotees, because the ritualistic brahmanas understand the Hare Krishna devotees know the truth, and they're going to lose all their clients if the Hare Krishna devotees come in. So devotees who go into Singapore have to take their neck beads off and say that they're not devotees. Act like demons. Yeah, I'm a demon. Let me in. Let me into the country. I'm a big demon. Demon. Anyway, so it's a question of time, place, and circumstance. Yes, we tell the truth. We don't lie. We don't change the philosophy. But to save someone's life, there are extraordinary circumstances. That's the whole point. Whereas Grandfather Bhishma didn't recognize the extraordinary circumstance. First of all, he should never have supported Duryodhana. I don't care what promise he made. It was the wrong thing. It was the wrong thing. And we have Drona, the wrong thing. And Prabhupada said, actually, if you really want to get into why they did what they did, is their consciousness was contaminated. Prabhupada said that Dronacharya, Kripacharya, and Grandfather Bhishma were eating food cooked in Duryodhana's kitchen. So as a result, their consciousness became contaminated. Prabhupada said, if you eat food cooked by, well, I don't want to use the word non-devotee, it's a negative word, by people who have not yet realized their Krishna consciousness, then the mind becomes wicked, W-I-C-K-E-D. So people can become confused, even great devotees. I mean, even you have Bart Maharaj, who was on the platform of Baba, and his mind became confused just by a little cute little baby deer. Now, he wasn't a pure devotee at that time, but he was on a very high platform, much higher than most of us in this class are on. And then he became attached to this little baby deer, and then next life, he became a baby deer. So, I hope that answers that question. No, don't lie. Do not lie. I'm telling you, don't lie. But there are extraordinary circumstances where it's required. Prabhupada also said, if a businessman is selling something and he tells someone, for you there's no profit, that is something that's done. I mean, how many times, or so many times have I gone into a car dealership and the car dealer says to me, I'm selling it to you at less than I paid for it. Do I actually believe that? No. And he actually pulls out a receipt from the company showing that he paid a certain amount of money. So it says, look, this is what I paid for it. I'm losing money on this just because I love you. And I'm thinking, he doesn't love me that much. He loves his family, or he loves money more. So I understand it's a little trick. So Prabhupada said, for business, it's sometimes like that one has to say something like that. Okay, who else has a question?
Hare Krishna Gurudev, this is Aditya Das.
Adidev, you have a question? Okay.
Yeah, Gurudev, can you give examples of Vibhava? You said Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is one of Vibhava. Is anything else or just Hare Krishna?
Another Vibhava? Well, don't you remember the course I was giving, the Nectar Devotion? There's two types of Vibhavas. One is called the Lambana and Udipana. The word Vibhava means that which stimulates some ecstasy. So Alambana means directly Krishna. Udipana means something related to Krishna. So the holy name is directly Krishna. Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukto Binatvam Namanamino Namachintamani Krishna's Caitanya Rasa Vigraha. So that's a Vibhava. And as far as the Udipana related to Krishna, let's say a peacock feather. Okay, I was looking for a peacock feather. Oh no, let's say this. Okay, what's this? Worry beads. No,
Japamala.
Mahamantra. So this, if someone is actually Krishna conscious, if they see this, then they feel ecstasy. Just like about a half hour before we gave class, I walked up to the temple for different reasons, and there was someone who had japa beads out, and I felt ecstasy. I said, wow, he's chanting. A new person was in the temple, and he was going with deep concentration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I started to feel ecstasy. So that's an udipana, things connected to Krishna. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Gurudev. So that will help the Sthai Bhav from there onwards?
The sthai bhav is what your steady emotion is. Like if your rasa is dasha, sakya, vatsalya, madhurya, etc., like that. That's connected. The constant emotion. Constant. What is your constant emotion? Actually, I like this, that I can move around during class. It's more natural than just like sitting and watching my face all the time. So it's like, that's what a sthai bhav is. Sthai means like your steady emotion. So steadily, let's say if I was Krishna's servant, so my steady emotion would be just servitude, fanning Krishna or something like that. That's my sthai bhav. Okay.
So the Sthai Bhav will be uncovered by Alambana or Udipana? Or
the sthai bhav would be manifest. I mean, it's always there, but it's manifest by the alambana and udipana. Then the other bhavas come out, and they're reflections or they're manifestations of one sthai bhav. Like the anubhav, the sattvika bhav, and the vyabhachari bhav, or vyabhachari or sanchari bhav.
those are side effects, right?
These are different methods of ecstasy. Anubhav means voluntary expressions of ecstasy. Like if I start dancing when I saw the japa beads, wow, great. That's an anubhav. And the sattvika bhav would be something that's part of my constitutional ecstasy. I mean, it's always there. There's a certain type of happiness or rolling on the ground or something. And the vyabhachari bhav would be, there's 33 of those were uncontrolled intermittent ecstasies that happen without any notice beforehand. All of a sudden, just like I find myself seeing those japa beads falling on the floor and crying out loudly, and I go unconscious. That would be a vyabhachari expression of vyabhachari or sanchari bhav.
So these are the same. Yeah, these are the symptoms, right? But these
are symptoms.
These bhavas, these bhavas can be in this physical body, and also they will be in more matured form in spiritual body, right?
That's right. Babas are actually in the physical body, and they're in the more mature form in the spiritual body, right? But they manifest because the physical body is being affected by the sattva, Vishuddha Sattva.
Mm.
The Sattvika Bhavs come from the Vishuddha Sattva. That's why they're called Sattvika Bhavs.
So basically, Sai Baba is the foundation of the spiritual body, right? Or it's
The Sthai Bhava is one's constitutional ecstasy based upon one's relationship. Yeah. Right. You know, Sthai Bhava, the relationship of Dasha Rasa or Sakya Rasa. That's my emotion. Krishna is my friend. If you're in Sakya Rasa.
so the emotion can be
The
body,
emotion
right?
of friendship. The emotion of friendship. That's Sthai
And the
Bhava.
emotion can manifest into the body, right? The spiritual
Yes,
body.
of course. Yeah, because the body is affected by, that's called Sattvika, Ashta Sattvika Bhav, by the association with the Vishuddha Sattva.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Gurudev.
they can be manifest in this body because this body becomes transformed and it becomes sattvic, the Vishuddha Sattvic. By, the body is transformed. The body of a great devotee becomes transformed like the iron rod, as Prabhupada gives the example. The iron rod in the fire becomes transformed and gradually becomes manifest as fire. That's pretty cool.
Mm.
Okay,
Thank you,
I
Gurudev.
think we're going to end now because tomorrow we have our Sunday virtual feast, in which none of you get a chance to eat, except for me. Whoops. And so we will say goodbye to everybody and see everybody tomorrow evening. So all glory is to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.